Is the answer more NATO, or should we be heeding Putin's threats when he says any move by countries such as Finland and Switzerland to join the defensive alliance would be met with some sort of military reprisal?
Look, if Finland, Sweden, and let's say Switzerland, I can't believe Switzerland, given its tradition of neutrality, I don't think that will ever be violated. Finland and Sweden are different propositions. I think if they were to join NATO, it would not be possible for the Russians really to do anything about those two specific countries. I think the irony is that, in my view, it was unlikely in the foreseeable future that Ukraine would have joined NATO. Ukraine has historically been, let's say, a sort of hinge between East and West. It has been historically close to Russia, and I think NATO probably would have been cautious over the admission of Ukraine. Of course, now that's all changed, it's history. But what happens next?
You mentioned earlier a sort of geopolitical realignment which is potentially underway, and for keen observers of various pieces moving around the board over the last months and years, one notices an axis or an alliance forming between Russia, China, involving other potentially unsavoury actors such as Iran. They've been doing joint military exercises. How close do you think that alliance is? How prepared are these nations to back each other up to face down the West, or is this just sort of friendships of convenience?
I think it's more than friendships of convenience, but let's take Russia and China. I think I would describe it as a partnership rather than an alliance, and I think there's a subtle difference. And if one takes a longer-term view, Russia's going to be a subsidiary partner in that relationship. Because we have to remember that, Russia economically is, I would almost say, puny. It's got a GDP about the size of Italy. Its population declined by 1 million in the last 12 to 18 months. It's got a totally commodity-related economy. It's got very poor foreign investment. And I think that Putin's overplaying of his hand, drastic overplaying on Ukraine, will make the Chinese incredibly wary. And let's face it, the Chinese, though they haven't come out in condemnation yet, as far as I know, of what Russia has done, they've been pretty cautious in their response. And China's been through an aggressive patch, and it's going to continue. You've got the Uyghurs, you've got the Hong Kong security situation, you've got their behavior in the South China Sea, you've got the noises on cross-strait issue Taiwan. But on the other hand, those people I know who are really serious commentators on China say that in the last 8-10 months, you've seen greater caution on the part of Xi Jinping in the way that he's behaved internationally, because possibly there are people in the Chinese leadership telling him, hang on, you're overplaying your hand. And China's been quite careful until recently, and recently, the last 3 or 4 years, is about its international image. And I think that the revulsion, the reaction of the world community to Russia, there's a big lesson in there for the Chinese. And then people obviously draw a parallel with Taiwan, possible invasion of Taiwan. Remember that would require an amphibious assault, which is a very complicated thing to do. Plus, Formosa, Taiwan, is a very mountainous island. You can't drive around on there with tanks and things. It's just not like that. So I'm not convinced that this Chinese-Russian relationship is absolutely solid. It's one more of convenience, and of course China is a great energy market, particularly if Russia now loses some of its other energy markets. Iran's a rather specific issue. And one has to sort of look at that in relation to the Middle East, in relation to the division between Sunni and Shia. And in a way, I mean, this is Russia making its presence felt in the Middle East by misbehaving, by aggravating the divisions. So, I mean, I certainly don't see a three-way block there. You know, you could sort of add in North Korea, and I mean, North Korea is sort of sui generis anyway. It's very much its own thing. I mean, what is key is, you know, trying to work out what the relationship between China and Russia might be or will be in the future. But, you know, if you know anything historically about that relationship, they've been enemies and competitors just as much as they've been convenient allies from time to time historically.